Welcome and thanks for joining us on episode number 248 of the Financially Independent Teachers Podcast. If you think your story could help other educators and you'd be willing to come on the show, please check out our webpage at financiallyindependentteachers.com, click on podcast, and then fill out the form to come on the show. As I've said many, many times before, this show would not be here if I was the only one hanging around talking to myself about money each week. It's all about the guests. And we've had, Dave Ramsey's daughter on, we've had JL Collins, kind of the godfather of Fi on. We've had almost every Ramsey personality on the show. We've had other experts, and we love our experts. We're not saying that we don't, because no matter what your profession is, we can learn from those expert money managers. However, the feedback I generally get from teachers is we want more teachers on the show. I want someone not who has a net worth of $50 million telling me how they did it. I want someone who was a teacher and they made 60, 70, $85,000 a year. And how are they doing it? So for our show to continue into 2026, I would love to have you guys go out there and fill on the form to come on the show. But I hope everybody had an amazing holiday season. We've been off for 2 weeks. It feels really weird to be back and recording. I might be a little bit rusty, and I went up to my family's house in Northeast Ohio. Unfortunately, we had to come home a little bit early. We had some sick family members, and I've had a little bit going on as well myself. So if I'm struggling through the podcast today with my voice, or if I'm coughing, I apologize. But we are back. We're going to be better than ever before. And our first guest is going to give us an amazing, amazing lesson that we all need to keep in mind when it comes to retirement. So, without further ado, Greg, thank you so much for being willing to come on the show. You filled out the form to come on the show, and you're willing to get deeply personal today with an issue when it comes to retirement that, frankly, many of us, I don't think, prioritize that much. Greg, how are things in Texas?
It's great. We're having a tropical Christmas, New Year's time. We had 85-degree weather on Christmas, so it was nice to see people out. The kids were out playing with their toys, their bikes on, and wearing shorts and t-shirts. It was kind of a weird deal, but actually, my wife and I started a little late. We have a 16-year-old and an 8-year-old.
16-year-old
So
and 8-year-old. Okay. So they're out there running around playing as well.
yeah, we're right in the middle of the messy middle, as they say.
Yeah, you're in the messy middle. And how old are you now, Greg?
I just turned 58, New Year's Eve.
You just turned 58. So at 50 years old or 49 years old, you and your wife end up finding out, hey, we're pregnant again.
Yeah.
I'm 43 now. I just had my birthday in December, and my uncle had my cousin when he was 46, and we hung out with all of them in Ohio for the holidays. And he was joking on me, saying, hey, can you imagine 3 years from now getting the word that, hey, you're having another baby? I'd say, I cannot imagine that. So I'm sure it's such a blessing, though.
It's there's some planning that goes into things, but it's just life, right? It happens. And
Yeah, you never know with life, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, for a brief background for those who might not know, can you tell us a little bit about your career in education and how you got to be on the Fit podcast?
sure. I started my career in education in 95, and I had a, a total of about 18, 19 years in public education. And I took, so there's a lot of years in there. I took two hiatuses, if you will, from teaching, and went back to the corporate world and did some technical training and things like that, but always returned back to teaching. I primarily taught math and some career courses as well, computers, and uh, I even spent a little bit of time being an adjunct professor. So it, and when I got to a little older in life, I decided that maybe it was time to retire a little early if I could, and kind of enjoy life, and kind of be with the kids a little bit more, my wife. And so that was kind of the journey,
You've
if you
worked
will.
a lot longer than 18, 19 years. It's just that you've hopped in and out of education. Um, how long have you been in the workforce as far as did you go to college and immediately go to college and immediately get a job right out of that, or did you do the military?
Right. So I went right out of high school um, and got a degree. It was kind of a engineering sales type degree. It was kind of a hybrid where you took several disciplines and then took some marketing and business courses and that thing, and got a job doing that at about 23 or so, 24, and decided that I didn't really like that a whole lot. I didn't like the sales part of it, and uh, I enjoyed more uh, the training and education. So I joined the military after I graduated, and immediately I had a choice, and I decided to go in the Air Force Reserves. So after I got through with about a year and a half of training, I took a few more math classes, and that's how I got into teaching. So that was around 95 when that happened.
So
And
interesting. It feels like teachers, it's like this, I don't know if you want to call it a call from God, or there's just some attraction to it. We've had multiple people like you on the show that have been in the corporate world, but they have the heart of a teacher. And even though the money was better in the corporate world, for whatever reason, it's like a tractor beam in Star Wars. It just keeps pulling them back to
yeah,
education. Can you talk about that struggle at all with, I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, but I'm assuming when you were in the private sector, you were making more money than you were as a public school teacher. Could you talk about maybe the struggle of going back and forth, and maybe why you ultimately chose to stick with education?
I mean, the first time I took a hiatus, it was more or less for finances. My wife and I, we weren't married at the time, but I was kind of helping her get through her college experience, and you know, because I had a military background and I was still in the reserves at that time, um, I had some marketable skills in electronics and telecommunications, and so I jumped into a corporate job, and I made probably 40% more than I was teaching. It wasn't like super crazy money, but it really helped us out a lot. And but throughout the entire time, I still managed to max out whatever retirement vehicle I had available to me, whether it was a 401k or when I was teaching my 403b. Um, and then, so after we kind of got through some of the financial stuff of her going to school, then, I was called back into teaching. So I did that. And anyway, and then fast forward a bunch of years, I guess, I, I took one other hiatus from teaching as well, and jump back into it. And then now that I've decided not to go back to public education, um, I'm teaching part time at a hybrid school. It's sort of a homeschool slash Christian private school, and I'm teaching 2 days a week there and loving it. And not a whole lot of prep time. Uh, make yourself
Sounds like
available
a
for the
great
student.
blend. Having a 16-year-old that's getting ready to, I don't know if the 16-year-old's driving yet, but all the things that go along with car insurance, and just, I don't know if they're into sports and a lot of extracurricular activities, and an 8-year-old, which isn't too much younger than my youngest, my daughter. I know how busy that is. And I think a lot of teachers, we would love if we could just teach a couple days a week, and still be able to kind of scoot the kids around and do that. Or you kind of Mr. Mom around the house with working 2 days a week and your wife still being full time?
Yeah, I am. And all credit goes to her. I mean, she keeps my schedule for me, and she reminds me when I mess up. And uh, but yeah, I get to do a lot of that, picking up and taking them to these activities and getting to see all the band concerts that they're in and sports activities that they participate in. So it's a lot of fun. And I don't think if I was working full time, I would still be able to do some of that, but not nearly as much freedom as I have now.
And I think that's one of the great things about being a teacher, especially if your kid is in the same district, even if you are full time, which I'm sure a lot of the people listening to the podcast are, having those teacher hours. I love. I'm done at 2:40 every day. I can pick up my
Wow.
son every day from middle school. I can pick up my daughter every day from elementary school, and I have that nice option. So you've planned well. Obviously, it sounds like even before you and your wife got married, you were investing, you were taking advantage of retirement. that's put you in a great position. And this is kind of a crazy number for many of us to wrap our mind around. But because you have done your due diligence over the course of, your lifetime with investing, your net worth from the last time you were on our show a few years ago is now climbed up to what number?
Well, it's around about 6.5 million or so, maybe a little more. I mean, it's some of it's tied up in real estate, so what you can actually sell that for. If you
And
had
when
to
you say
sell.
real estate, is that your primary home or is there some rental real estate going on?
So we do have a few single family rentals that we have in the area, and we don't manage any of those anymore. We have a property manager take care of that stuff for us. But so uh, it makes up, I would say, maybe 1.5 million of the net worth is maybe tied up into not my own personal residence, but those properties.
Gotcha. So the other 5 million-ish, is that all in the stock market invested?
um, yeah, about a little over 4 millions in the market, and then we do have some family land that kind of generational land that goes back to the early 1900s that we're in the middle of. I don't know if we're going to be forced to sell it, but everything's growing around it, and we're trying to sell some of that right now. Um, but yeah, about 4 millions in the market, and we're probably at about an 80-20 split between equities and fixed income, bonds and cash.
I think this is a great time to introduce before we get into the main topic today is going to be about something we all need to think about before we hit retirement due to an experience you've had recently. But talking multiple times, you've said that you managed all the money before, but you got to a point where you decided to seek professional help. Can you talk about maybe the confidence that you had doing this on your own? And was there a certain level you guys finally got to and said, "Hey, we need a financial advisor to help get us to that next spot"? Where are you at mentally with all of that, even though there's fees associated with it?
Yeah. So honestly, I just knew that there's no way that I could kind of navigate through the withdrawing strategy that we would be coming up with in 10 years or so, however many years that's going to be. Um, and I knew that making the wrong decision could be pretty costly tax wise, and also maybe depleting your portfolio in the wrong order might have consequences that you don't know about until it's too late. uh, and then of course Social Security and pension and when to take that, and so all that kind of stuff I kind of felt like I needed some help with. And then also, just if I wasn't around, then my wife doesn't like to do this stuff at all. And so having somebody that we could trust and have a few years of relationship built into it before, if something did happen, that she would be able to understand who to go to and some questions to ask, and so
That's all
anyway.
good rationale. If you have a 403b with one old school and then a Roth IRA that you had from Fidelity, but then another Roth with Vanguard, and then something happens to you, which we're going to be talking about shortly. If you don't have some sort of a legacy box or some sort of a spreadsheet that has all the usernames and logins and things like that, it could be a very overwhelming situation when you're losing a loved one or if somebody's injured to try to figure all this stuff out. But if you have, the financial advisor or the planner, and you just know that it's with John or Jessica or whoever it is, you just
Right.
go to them and they've got it all handled. That could make things a lot nicer. Maybe it's worth that 1% fee.
Right. So, and navigating through making that choice was a little bit. I mean, I probably spent about 3 months interviewing maybe half a dozen or so advisors, and you kind of know when you found the right one. And luckily, I went with a fee-based only advisor who charges a flat fee regardless of your portfolio size. So that expense that I have is locked in. It doesn't grow when my portfolio grows. And
Nice.
yeah, it's turned out to be a really nice thing. It was a younger guy that had his he was a master's degree in engineering, got his MBA, and he was interested in going through corporate finance. And then he helped his parents navigate their retirement. And then he just said he caught the bug. So he started a firm while he was still working at a big defense contractor here in Dallas. And once he made a plan, once he got to a certain number of families, he was just going to turn in his badge and and so that's what he's done, and he's done quite well. And anyway, he has a nice little model set up, and he meets with you a couple times a year and is available for questions. Uh, and he's very proactive in coming up with strategies that I never even thought of. So, I mean, just each year, I can't imagine that. I'm sure he saved me or helped me to grow a lot more than what the fees are worth, and also the peace of mind. You can't put a price on that, but um, yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with DIY, do it yourself. Uh, it's hard to justify paying $6,000 or $7,000 a year if your portfolio is not that large. But when you get to the point where you're going to have to make some major decisions, it's nice to have a second set of eyes.
For sure. And if you've got a net worth of 6.5 million and it's $6,000 a year, it's like it's a drop in the bucket. I mean, he's easily probably going to be able to, with navigating situations, going to be able to save you at least $6,500 a year just on, like you talked about, the decumulation phase. So, just like I wouldn't let any old person come babysit my kids.
Right.
We probably don't want any old person to babysit our portfolio and our finances. It's going to maybe leave a legacy for generations. It sounds like a really good idea that if you're out here and you're listening and you're wanting professional help, maybe you want to interview 4, 5, 6, 10 different people, and they aren't interviewing you. It's you're interviewing them because this is a very personal thing. So speaking of personal things, actually, I want to ask you one other question because
Sure.
I'm sure there's people here listening and they're thinking, and honestly, I think, Greg, you might be the person with the highest net worth we've ever had on this show in 5+ years. I don't know. We've had the millionaire math teacher on a handful of times, and I think his net worth's now 2.5 million or something like that. Yeah, I've had Jerry Bourne on the show, which we love. Jerry, shout out to Jerry. Once he hit, I think $2 or $3 million. He hasn't disclosed where he's at now. Maybe
Yeah.
Jerry's up there with you. But I'm curious, do you know how much you guys live off of each month? What does it take to operate the Springer household? Are you guys spending 10 grand a month, 5 grand a month? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's creeping up around 10, you
So
know.
10,000 a month. So you guys are about
Mhm.
$120,000 a year. But again, when you look at the comparison of, okay, we have a net worth that's over 6 million and we're spending 10,000 a month. Again, I would say that that is pretty conservative compared to maybe what you could be spending, because I know people that spend 10 grand a month and they make 10 grand a month and they don't
Sure.
have anything left over and they have a net worth of zero.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, I always am very fortunate and blessed to be able to spend that kind of money without thinking about it a whole lot. But inflation is real. I mean, that we haven't really changed our lifestyle a whole lot. And that, a couple of years ago, it seemed like we were, maybe spending 6,500 a month or so, and we could tighten up if we needed to, but we're not going crazy. We still keep an eye on the numbers, and uh, we don't want to send out the message to our kids that there's
Do
no
whatever you want, whenever you want.
right, because that's going to be counterproductive. But anyway, yeah, it's. I mean, we still keep our eye on things, but we don't have to, because I think we did a lot of heavy lifting early. We were able to
Yeah.
to maybe focus on it as much as we did before.
Yeah, you rode your bike to the top of the hill, you did all the hard work, and now you get to put your feet out and just scream on the way down a little bit and have a little bit of fun and not have to do as much work. But again, as you mentioned, it's still always worth monitoring. You can't just look at all the NBA players and NFL players and celebrities that they might make, 6, $10 million plus a year and they go broke.
Right.
You can't just go crazy just because you have a $6 million net worth. And it sounds like you guys aren't. So here we are, we're bouncing in and out of teaching. You mentioned that you had kids a little bit later in life, and then you wanted to retire. You want to step back, but then you got pulled back into the classroom part time. But tell us what happened about a year and a half ago that changed your outlook on life, and maybe some advice for us out there that get so focused on the net worth and the 4% rule and all the other things financially. Should I get an advisor? None of that stuff doesn't really matter if you're not living on the earth. Let's talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. So, like you said, about a year and a half ago, I was teaching and I had a planned orthopedic surgery. I had a hip replacement. I had some arthritis in one of my hips, and it was just a routine thing. I had went in and had the procedure done, and I was going through rehab, physical therapy, and starting to walk, you know, and things seemed like they were going pretty well. And then I had a little bit of anxiety feeling that I normally don't have, and I didn't think much about it. And it happened on two or three occasions within a week. And my wife is the third time she said, this doesn't seem right. Let's go get it checked out. So we just pulled up to the ER, small little ER near our house, and they hooked me up to EKG and all that. And they're like, "Oh, you're having a heart attack right now." I was like, "What?" I had no pain at all, just that uneasy feeling. And they I thought they were just going to put me in an ambulance and take me to a bigger hospital, but they care flighted me to a hospital. I had a couple of stents put in, and uh, so I had some pretty major blockage I wasn't even aware of. And I had a cardiac screening for my hip surgery just a month earlier, and I passed, which I don't understand how you could pass a cardiac screening and then have a heart attack that soon after. But anyway, I when I was in the helicopter riding, I obviously I wasn't as scared as I thought I should be scared. I kind of had a little a feeling of I think I have everything under control. If something were to happen, I knew it was in God's hands anyway. And so I as I was in the hospital, got some advice from the doctors, and I kind of decided right then and there that I was going to make a lifestyle change, and so I started focusing a little bit more on my health and changing my diet and exercise routine and all that stuff. And so the same strategies that I employed to learn about personal finance, I kind of shifted that to the health side.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's crazy to think about. Again, you just passed a test. Everything seemed fine. You weren't in any pain. And then the next thing you know, who knows how high up in the sky flying to a hospital, not knowing even where you're going. And probably, I'm sure at that point, like you said, it's in God's hands, but you're thinking about your wife, you're thinking about your kids, you're thinking about all these different things of, am I going to make it? And even if I am going to make it, like, how are things going to be different? But I've read multiple articles before. I don't know if you've ever seen them where they say that teachers are some of the most unhealthy professionals out there. There's so much stress that can come with the teaching profession. And especially if you're in the world like I've been in, many are, where you're coaching and things like that. We aren't always eating healthy unless you're planning. I remember being a young coach and I had to be at school at 6:30, teaching all day, like a state tested area. And then in North Carolina, because we're so cheap, we don't want to hire bus drivers, having a conference baseball game 2.5 hours away, and I have to drive the bus, or maybe an assistant coach drives the bus. It depends on the time in my career. And then you're not getting home until 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, and you're eating McDonald's 3 nights a week or whatever. So it's just not a healthy thing. And some of the stuff, I'll go to teacher meetings and everybody's down in their Diet Cokes and their Cokes and cookies
Right.
and all the different things they provide for us to You have jeans day, and then we've got, a bunch of things that aren't good for you up in the front office to
Right.
snack on or whatever. We've got to do a better job as teachers. We put everyone else, it seems like, in front of us, and we put
Right.
ourselves last, because I think that is kind of the heart of the teacher, is to be a servant of others. Have you seen that in your career teaching, where it seems like a lot of the teachers you've worked with, maybe including yourself, myself, we have put that on the back burner?
Oh yeah, most definitely, right? I mean, just the number of hours that uh, coaches put in, like you said, if you're in a state tested area, you're expected to have these great lesson plans. You're held to a high standard as far as how your kids perform on their test, and then you got an hour and a half practice every day. You got a football game or baseball game to go coach and drive, and yeah, and your sleep, your diet, your stress levels, all those things kind of attribute to a lot of these lifestyle factors that we don't really pay attention to as much. We think, oh, well, we're staying busy, so we must be healthy, right? We go to the doctor once a year and they're saying we're fine and everything must be fine.
And that's even
And
a thing now, since COVID, it seems like it's really difficult to even get a doctor's appointment. They might be 2 or 3 months out. And I know a lot of teachers feel guilty. Let's say that they think about a doctor's appointment. It's now July, but they're going back to school in August and they can't get in until October. It's like, man, I can't afford to take a day off. I can't afford to miss. And we all know it's harder to miss and come up with sub plans than it is to be in the classroom. So then we just
right,
kind of kick the can down the road and say, well, I'll make sure I do it, over Christmas break. But then all of a sudden you're focused on the holidays and everything else that goes with that. Then you forgot. And then they tell you can't get in until February, and now you can't miss again. And then you
right.
just kick the can further down the road. Well, I'll do it next summer. And then life happens. So what advice would you give to the hardworking teachers out there that, they don't want to compromise building wealth, but also what are some things that they can do to not compromise on the health side as well, as they're trying to be a professional, as they're trying to build wealth and take care of their family? What can they do from a health standpoint?
I mean, I think if you tie it into how how a lot of your listeners are tied into maximizing and optimizing their finances and automating things, um, maybe we could do a better job of you know automating our health visits and uh, maybe increasing the frequency of that, even though you might pay a little bit out of pocket on if you go to the doctor too many times a year. I think that expense might be worth it if we're taking the time to implement what our healthcare professionals are advising us on. Um, and you know, just like they say on the airplane, you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you before you help your kids or anyone around you. That's maybe some advice we need to take, like maybe dedicating some time every day, whether it be if you're a morning person, taking a walk or meditating or whatever it is you do to kind of relieve your stress and also get some exercise in at the same time. Uh, you know, Incorporating that into the day, maybe at lunchtime, maybe take some of your teacher friends and maybe take a couple laps around the school and just try to focus in on how you're going to fit that into your busy life.
Yeah, I think all these things tie together, right? Because to me, the most stressed teachers are teachers that are broke, that they're barely getting by, they're struggling for whatever reason. Maybe it's divorce, maybe it's being a single parent. I'm not blaming the teacher here, but we know that educators, obviously, in most cases, aren't out there making the money of, you know, accountants in other college educated fields. But the stress of, 30 kids in a classroom, the stress of grading, the stress of parents, we know since COVID as well that more and more gets dumped on teachers. Now you're a counselor and you're a therapist and you're all these different
Mhm.
things. And a lot of kids have rough home lives and you're trying to help that. But when your
Right.
finances aren't in order, and then you kind of have an attitude of screw it, a lot of times your health gets out of whack. These things all work together, but you can't just focus only on one. You have to have balance in life, because that stress does cause physical issues. I wondered if the doctors ever said anything to you about that hip replacement. Do they think that those two things were connected at all, or were they completely unconnected when it comes to the heart attack following the hip replacement and the therapy?
I mean, they they didn't really say that outright, but I feel like there's a lot to that. I mean, my cardiologist said, "Hey, your numbers before your heart attack for an average healthy person, they were decent, not great, but decent." And he said, what he taught me to focus in on more is looking at your family history. That has a lot more to do with it than even some of the other things that you can control. He said, so I guess I sort of ignored the fact that I knew that we had heart disease on both sides of my family, and that, uh, so that's another thing too, just taking reality for what it's worth, and instead of trying to deny that something is the way it is, embrace it and do the best you can with it, right? And so that's sort of the approach that I'm trying to take right now.
And I'm
Um,
thinking of the financial side of all this stuff of, doctor's visits and preventative maintenance. If you can prevent certain things, it can stop maybe the catastrophic event. And sure, that's going to cost money and there's co-pays and things like that. But I know some teachers out there do have like a health savings account that they might have available to them, which is the triple tax advantage. In North Carolina, we don't, unfortunately. But also, that FSA, that flex spending account, where you can put money, pre-tax onto your flex spending card, and that might give you a couple $1,000s that when you have these doctor's visits, not only did that reduce your taxable income, which helps save a little bit of money, just connected to that little debit card there, and you can carry that around and you can use that to pay for your doctor's visits. Now, the thing with the FSA that you've got to keep in mind is that if you don't use it, you lose it. So you've got to be careful that if you put $2,000 on that card and maybe you didn't have any doctor's visits or health issues this year, and you've got a month left to spend $2,000, you might want to go to Walgreens or CVS or whatever, and you can look on the little tags all over the store and it will say FSA approved. And you might be able to buy your Band-Aids and Dayquil and NyQuil and maybe some allergy medicine and things like that. A lot of that stuff is covered. So where do you go from here now, as you're approaching your 60s? Is there anything that you'll do different moving forward when it comes to your health? Um, will you go in for more routine maintenance and testing? I can't remember the name of it, but I've seen a lot of people, typically it seems like in more stable financial situations that are going to these kind of health and maintenance doctors where they're going to give you all these different tests and they're going to do all these different things to kind of zero in on things before the catastrophic happens. Are you going to, do you know the name of that? I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'm not familiar. I mean, I where they go in and kind of
They'll do like a
test
full
your
body
system.
scan. They're
Yeah,
testing
right.
everything.
Yeah, I have had one of those done before, and they did, and they did, mention that there was some plaque buildup, but I didn't listen to it as well as I should have. But I have a trusted cardiologist now that I go see regularly, and I don't plan on stopping that relationship. And then my healthcare provider in town, the doctor I go see, they both kind of see eye to eye on those issues. And so I haven't, other than my lifestyle change, I incorporate a lot of walking. Um, I use a weighted vest when I go out walking, and sort of it's been helpful. It's allowed me to help me lose about 50 pounds in a couple of years. And and I the guy that put the stents in, as soon as he finished the procedure, he told me that I should have a plant-based diet. And so I thought, well, I've never thought about that. And so 2 days later, I took my last bit of dairy and my last bit of meat. So for the last couple of years, I've changed my diet 100%, and I haven't really looked back on that. I think it's going to be something I can sustain, and you know, so just trying to make some incremental changes, and keep seeing my doctor, and try to be as proactive as I can.
Yeah, I
That's
think
that's
it's
going to
it's
be
like
the path.
anything else with the finances, the health, family, whatever it is, intentionality is so important. And I think I'm sure it's not just teachers, it's people in every career field, but especially teachers. Sometimes when you get that downtime, you just want to veg out. You don't want to have to do any more planning. I've done lesson planning. I've done data teams. I've done all these different things. The last thing I want to do is now meal prep and plan and do all that. It's just so much easier to order Chick-fil-A and have DoorDash come and deliver it at the doorstep and
Right.
just kind of take a nap or whatever. But I think like anything else, if you can, just like we budget our money, we have to learn how to budget our time. And again, this is a great episode for the new year here. And I'm speaking to myself that it's so much easier. We always prep for hurricane season around here, and I had a buddy that told me, hey, one thing I do in my prep is I'll buy a bunch of chicken, I'll marinate it, we'll buy, a bunch of different frozen meats and stuff like that, put it in the freezer. So then if we do have a hurricane situation without power for a week or two, you have a bunch of food and you just have to make sure you've got propane for the grill outside, and at least you've got food for a couple weeks. And I had
Right.
never done that until this year. And it took me, maybe 3 or 4 hours of marinating and cutting stuff up and things like that, putting it in Ziplocs. But we didn't have any hurricanes in North Carolina this year, thank you, Lord. So
Yeah.
now what we've been eating over Christmas break is a bunch of that stuff that I had prepared for the summer that we never needed. But it's made Christmas and being home so much more easier because that 3 or 4 hours of prepping is carrying us through weeks of the holidays.
Right.
Are you a meal prepper now, or do you help out with the
Um,
kids, and are you
so
helping
we,
shift their diets?
well, they reluctantly, will try a little bit of mine. But more or less we have three different meals going on here almost every day. So, um, but I do, prepare my own food more or less. And then, the kids eat their kids' diet, and my wife, I kind of help her a little bit, but yeah, we basically plan and do our shopping online, and they eat out quite a bit more than I do. I just don't have the desire to eat out much, and but I do cook on a regular basis. So
Gotcha. So, what advice would you have here as we wrap up? Obviously, you've been in and out of education. You've got kids still in, the school system. You've had a life altering event, which is, you've lost 50 pounds. You've given up dairy and meat and things like that. But you've got a nice net worth, probably the highest that's ever been on the show. If you could just give a couple minutes of advice to the teachers out there that are maybe struggling and they just don't feel like any of this stuff is possible, to build even a net worth of $500,000. Any advice for somebody who's approaching 60 and you've kind of been there and done that for the struggling, messy middle teacher?
um, I mean, I guess my number one piece of advice is that, um, if you can just be average, like a C plus or C minus student for 20, 30, 40 years, you'll wake up and you'll be astonished at the results that happen. And like I've made countless mistakes financially as far as not maximizing this or maximizing that, but I think I was pretty average for a long time as far as automating my finances where it automatically got invested. And I may not have always picked the right places for them to be, but I picked okay places for them to be. And then, you, with the power of compounding interest, time is really the major thing. And so give yourself some grace. You don't have to be an expert in all this stuff. You don't have to be an expert in health and diet and all that stuff. But, you know, there's a lot of information out there, and you sift through all the noise and get to some uh, simple advice and stick to it, and not be perfect at it, but just be average at it. You can see some heavy returns.
Yeah,
That's my
that's great advice. I think perfectionism, can definitely cripple people where we think, yeah, I don't even want to try that because I don't think I'm going to be that good at it. But just getting that ball rolling, just doing something. It's the first of the year, a little after, just opening the Roth IRA, putting in $100 a month and putting it in a target date retirement fund or the S&P 500 or a total market index fund. Set it and forget it. Just
Yeah.
doing that, it's amazing what that can do. I had made a post yesterday about, when you look at a teacher with a pension and then you look at a teacher maybe with Social Security, which I know many teachers get, some teachers don't. Figure out how much are you spending each month, or how much do you want to spend in retirement, subtract the pension, subtract Social Security, and then whatever's left over, you're going to have to make up in some way, shape, or form, whether it's rental real estate, whether it's the market. But I think for a lot of teachers that want to live off of maybe five to $7,000 a month in retirement, um, I don't think that most teachers really even need to have $1 million invested per
Mm.
se to meet the basic goals of living a decent lifestyle, not having to be the Walmart greeter until you're 85 years old. It doesn't take that much to do it.
It doesn't. And if you're a teacher out there and you're getting started late, find that young teacher down the hallway that maybe you can mentor them and say, hey, pay yourself first, find $200. And then once you feel comfortable doing that, you can maybe up it a little bit and at least max out your Roth and get those things headed in the right direction. Um, but yeah, it's possible for sure. And you always say the power of the pension. We may not make as much money as other people, but we're one of few besides government employees that do have that guaranteed pension that we know that we can count on. But knowing your baseline, where you're going to be at with your pension, and then finding out what your gap is going to be, and then, like you said, figure out ways, if you want to dabble into real estate like you guys do, or if you just want to, maybe look for other avenues. And investing was, in my opinion, is the way to go. I unless you want to make it a full-time job, real estate is not passive. It's not
Yeah.
passive. And even though I've handed mine off to a property manager, it's still not passive. I mean, I still have decisions to make and stress that comes along with, when I see his number pop up on my phone, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is there a roof
Yeah,
that
what
needs to be
is it?
replaced?
Yeah,
So,
what is it? What is it? Your index fund doesn't need a new roof,
right. So
Well, this has been
anyway,
great. I'm glad you're healthy.
thank you.
Keep it going. I think again, another option for teachers out there who might not feel like they invested as soon as they should have, or maybe there is a shortage in the gap that they want to have. Once you do retire, there are options out there to come back and maybe work a couple days a week, or to
Sure.
the dreaded substitute word. Honestly, I don't think I would mind subbing when I retire. I don't know if I will or not, but I know a lot of retired teachers from my district that they kind of just identify a few schools and a few classrooms that they know are like the high level AP honors or IB kids. And they have a list of those teachers. Whenever that teacher's name pops up that they're absent, they'll jump on that. And maybe they don't sub on Mondays and Fridays. They only sub Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So they guarantee themselves a 4-day weekend. But
Right.
just having some of your financial house in order gives you that flexibility, even if you do have to return to maybe a part-time role. So, Greg, thank you so much again. I hope you have a happy, blessed new year. And I appreciate the fact that you're still with us following the show years after your first appearance on it. I didn't know you were still following.
Yeah, every Sunday, look forward to that episode dropping, and I usually make it. That's my walk on Sunday before church. I pop that on and go out to the park and take my walk, and good way to
There
get
you
things
go.
going.
Fit is encouraging people to get out there and move, because if you're listening to my podcast and you're not moving, you might fall asleep. So go ahead and get out there and get walking. You'll stay awake, and you might even learn something along the way from people like Greg. So, Greg, again, have a blessed new year. Keep us posted on how you're doing, and we appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Dave. Keep up the good work, and you're doing a lot of good for a lot of people out there.
I greatly appreciate it. And if it wasn't for people like you coming on the show, yeah, again, we wouldn't exist. So if you're listening today, you don't have to have a net worth of $5, $6 million, or even $1 million. You don't even have to have a net worth of $1. We just want teachers that are willing to come on and share their story, and we can learn. We can learn from your success. We can learn from your mistakes. We appreciate you filling out that form. So thank you so much for joining us in this new year, the first episode of 2026. We hope you join us for next week. And as always, be frugal, be fearless, and be a lifelong learner. Take care, everyone.